So, shortly after I had started taking the Ritalin for hyperactivity, my parents started noticing some negative behavioral changes. Um, they noticed that it would calm me down, but it was to the point where I was almost zombie like. And all I could do was sit there and just stare into space. Um, they noticed that I wasn't up and down and out of my seat like I used to be, but they also noticed that I wasn't able to function. Um, but they kept me on Ritalin because it did calm me down so much. And when I got to fourth grade, um, I will forever remember my fourth grade teacher, Carla Green. Um, she noticed my struggle socially and emotionally. She saw how I was when I was on the medication. And instead of casting me aside like my other teachers and my peers, she made an effort to really get to know me and my family. Um, Almost to the point where she put her career on the line. Um, because she would invite me and my family over to her house just so I could have play dates with her kids, so I could socialize, um, just so I could kind of be in a safe place. And my parents um, really found a friend in her. She was the first teacher to be able to see past my struggle, past my disability. And she told my parents, please take her off the Ritalin. It is hurting her more than helping her. It is inhibiting her and it is killing her soul. She was able to look past the hyperactivity, past the surface behavior, and see the deeper root of the issue. She was able to recognize that I didn't need to be medicated, that all I needed was love and attention. So my parents took her advice and took me off the Ritalin. And with that, all the hyperactivity, all the inattention um, came back. And I started struggling again in the classroom. Um, and then the following year in fifth grade is when I experienced my first crush. Um, and, I was kind of, I was, 11, 10, 11. And I remember this kid, I'm not going to mention names, but I just remember, oh, he's cute. He's so cute. And I just remember trying to do everything I could to get him to notice me. And I just remember all his friends kind of teasing him about me, and me not really understanding what was going on. And they would kind of egg me on in a joking manner, like, hey, like, I think you should ask so and so to hang out, out recess, or ask him if he wants to sit with you at lunch. And they would encourage me. Um, and looking back, it was basically um, just to make fun of me, just to humiliate me. But back then, I didn't understand that. Back then, I thought they were being serious. Um, so I would put myself out there and ask him to hang out. And of course, I would get shot down. Um, he would make comments like, why would someone like me want to get caught dead with someone as ugly as you? And it wasn't just him, like it was his friends as well. And I think the teachers even found it humorous. Um, because I remember I would go up to my teachers and be like, oh, like, do you think so and so really likes me? And they would always be like, I don't know. You should go talk to him. You should try to talk to him and see like how he responds to you. And this was coming from the teacher, so of course, um, I took it seriously and I put myself out there more and would get made fun of more and humiliated. But me being me, like I didn't see that. Um, and I remember this incident where a bunch of his friends handed me a note that was supposedly written by him, and it had it was signed. It looked like it was signed by him, and it said, "Hey, like, meet me out on the playground, by the basketball court." So, I was so excited. I went out there at recess. I was waiting there, and all his friends, all my classmates, and teachers were standing in a circle out at the basketball court. And I was just kind of standing there waiting. Um, and he never showed up. And I was waiting and waiting and waiting, and all of a sudden, everyone just starts laughing. And I'm like, what's going on? And they're like, did you honestly think that he was going to come and meet you? Did you honestly think that he would want to go out with someone as ugly as you? And I just remember that became the biggest joke in fifth grade was, oh my goodness, like, guess what happened to Jessica? Guess what happened with this? Um, so that was my first real experience with heartbreak and rejection from a guy. Um, but instead of backing off, I think it just made me even more determined to get their approval. And that would be the first of many rejections that I would go through in my lifetime. So it was in fifth grade when I first started singing. I remember we would have choir class, and I just remember how good I felt whenever I was singing, whenever music was on the schedule. I just got so happy. And when I was singing, I felt so free. When I was listening to music, I felt alive. And I remember being in a choir concert and just feeling like I was on top of the world. Music was definitely my happy place, especially going through a lot of my dark times. I used music as an escape. And I have been singing ever since. And it's definitely something that is very therapeutic to me. And I just found a lot of joy and happiness in. So in 7th grade, that was a hard year. We had a couple new guys come into our class, and I just remember having the biggest crush on all of them, and just trying so hard to get them to notice me, kind of the same deal as back in 5th grade. And I just remember one of the guys actually going as far as getting me out on the playground, and people standing in a circle, kind of deja vu to the first situation in 5th grade. And when I was there and the circle was around me, the circle of people kind of like formed around me and him, he asked me if I would go out with him. And I was so happy. Of course, I said yes. And he kind of froze there for a couple seconds and rolled his eyes and was like, oh, God. And I remember thinking, what just happened? Like, what did I do? And then the next thing I remember was everyone just erupting in laughter. And then it finally hit me like, oh, I just got set up again. I just got humiliated. And that was a huge letdown. That was a big letdown. And I remember just really struggling a lot. Not just with that, but just with other people's treatment of me, and how the teachers would treat me since that incident. I remember they would be like, hey, Jessie, like, why don't you go see if so-and-so wants to talk, or if so-and-so wants, and it just all started becoming so overwhelming. And on top of that, I remember this new girl starting in our class, and just how everyone basically said how pretty she was, and all the guys that I had crushes on flocked to her and started giving her attention. And I think she actually started dating a couple of them. And that just added insult to injury. I mean, it felt like a knife was being stabbed into my heart. And I just remember the girls, the popular girls, just relentlessly making fun of me. And I remember an incident that happened in gym class where we had to all get dressed in the same locker room, and they would start making fun of my chest, saying, oh my gosh, and they would actually like start rubbing the wall and saying, this wall has more curves than you. What makes you think that any guy would want someone as flat as you? And just going on and on about my looks. And some of the girls would say, oh, how many ply is the tissues that you stuff your bra with? Just comments that were cruel. And I remember one day just changing out of my gym clothes into my regular clothes, and my back was turned, and feeling kind of like this pressure on my back, but not really knowing what it was. So I really didn't think anything of it. And when I went out of the locker room after I had changed, just people snickering, just people just giggling behind my back. And I had no idea what was going on. And one of the teachers pulled me aside, and he was like, Jessie, you need to change your shirt. And I was like, why? Like, what's going on? And he was like, here's a new shirt. Just go change. So I went in the bathroom and I changed. And I took my shirt off and I looked at it and saw that one of the girls had started writing bitch on my back in ballpoint pen. That pretty much drove me over the edge. And I remember sitting there at lunch one day, and back then, at lunch they would give you plasticware, like a little plastic knife, a fork, and a spoon. And I just remember taking the knife and just kind of like sliding it over my wrist, kind of like, I mean, I didn't think it would do anything, but I think just the idea kind of just went into my head, and I was like, oh, like, I wonder what people would do if I weren't here. I wonder if people would miss me. Like, I think everyone would be a lot happier if I weren't here. And that was my first thought of ending it. So some of the girls at lunch had saw what I tried to do, and they reported it to the principal, who called my parents. So my parents had to go in for a meeting, and the principal pretty much told my parents that they needed to put me in an institution because there was no help for me at that school. And an institution for people like me would be the most likely place I would survive and do well in. Of course, my parents didn't. And the principal warned them that I would probably not make it out of 8th grade. And to not even think about high school. Because, in her words, I would get eaten alive in high school, and I would most likely flunk out. And she kept trying to persuade my parents to put me in an institution, because it would be a load off their back, so they wouldn't have to continue taking care of me. Um, and also, she said it was the only place where I would get the help I needed. Needless to say, my parents didn't put me in an institution, and they insisted that I finish my 8th grade year at that school. And miraculously, I graduated with my 8th grade class. And my parents started looking at other options for high school. They finally wised up to the fact that Catholic schooling was not it. So they started looking at public high schools around our area. And the whole time, former teachers and the guidance counselor kept trying to tell them that what they were doing for me was a huge mistake and that they would regret it.